Nervous consumers have snapped their wallets shut, driving retail sales growth to its lowest level in 50 years. And a Productivity Commission report released today shows the poor numbers come on the back of a 20-year decline in sales growth. The industry's blaming its recent woes in the rise in offshore online shopping, but the Commission's pointing its finger at local, state and federal regulation. Earlier, I spoke with the Assistant Treasurer. Bill Shorten, welcome.
Good evening, Chris.
Productivity in the retail sector is among the worst in the developed world, and the Commission points to inflexibility in your workplace relations laws as one of the problems.
You're right, it does touch upon industrial relations. Let's be clear. Shop assistants get $15 or $16 an hour. The idea that the future of the retail industry depends on cutting their wages back, to me, doesn't fly. What the Productivity Commission does, I think, say, which is remarkable and new to the debate, is that whilst the government, there's a range of things governments can do, that the retail industry itself needs to sharpen up its act. It needs to innovate and adapt to consumers' changing needs.
All right, we'll come to that in a moment, because we have to look also at what the government can do in this space, and the Productivity Commission does point to it. It actually does make a recommendation about it and talks about increases in penalty rates as a result of ward modernisation being a problem for retailers. Are you going to do something about that?
Well, we've already substantially changed the industrial relations landscape, ensuring fairness for employees and employers.
And made it more inflexible.
Oh no, let's be clear. A lot of people work in the retail industry, earn less than $50,000 a year. The idea that the future of the retail industry can be sustained by cutting real wages, it doesn't fly. But the Productivity Commission's made the point in the report that there are changes and that Fair Work Australia's going to investigate how the changes that the Gillard government's made, how they're working. There's a process. The Productivity Commission's acknowledged that labour costs are always an issue in an industry. I think the big story here is, one, the big retailers said that if we simply slapped the GST on all items less than $1,000, then retail would go well. The Productivity Commission's, I think, blown the whistle on that proposition.
And the Productivity Commission does say, though, that lowering the GST would be an equitable thing to do. It brings in question some of the costs of that.
Oh, there's no doubt if you could just simply apply in the perfect world the principle of tax neutrality, then the GST is applied on everything. But what it also said is that at the moment, with the technology we've got, it would cost $1.6 billion to the taxpayer to collect $500 million of taxes. So the idea tomorrow that we just abolish the GST exemption, which was introduced by the Howard government, I should add, the idea that we should abolish it tomorrow will just cost the taxpayer $3 for every dollar.
You're talking about dropping it from $1,000 to something else. That figure you just quoted was to $20, but you might do it to a figure that was under $1,000.
Well, if you have a look at the Productivity Commission graph, most items that people are buying online are under $100. And the other thing which we've got to remember is that the big retailers would have you believe that but for GST, then life would be better. The fact of the matter is everyone who buys items under $100 still has to pay the freight and international postage and handling. So there's already a natural barrier to competition from overseas. The real issue here is that the GST and getting rid of the exemption in first blush is not going to change the world of retail. It'll just cost consumers another 10%.
So the retailers' problems, and we're seeing them in very difficult times at the moment, are of their own making?
Well, no, there's the high dollar, let's be clear. That means that items produced overseas cheaper than items produced here. There's no question that there's been an easing in the economy, in parts of the economy, that the mining boom's been uneven. But I think there is also a proposition here. Consumers will go online for a range of reasons. Price is one, but the price differential, according to the Productivity Commission, is far greater than 10 or 15%, which is the difference in taxes on low-value items. So price, and what it reveals is that some of our big retailers have been keeping big margins for themselves. The second proposition, it says, is that people are looking for greater range. The third thing they're looking for is better service. So and also with the advent of, the tablet computers and the iPhones, people can access a whole world of choice far more easily than they used to.
So are you saying the big retailers are gouging?
I'm saying that the big retailers have relied on a business model for 30 years. They would send they relied on the combination of large bricks and mortar shopping centres and department stores. They would also rely on sending their buyers to low-cost jurisdictions in Asia. They'd buy up clothes and other items cheaply. They'd come back here and then they'd sell them at big markups. What's happened is that increasingly the consumers bypassing the middleman of the big retailers and hunting for the bargains themselves. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
So the margins are too high?
Well, I think that if consumers are looking for the best deal, it's no good just proposing to increase their taxes as a retail strategy to keep customers coming in your store. The consumer is changing.
Isn't the biggest problem for the retail sector at the moment a loss of confidence in the community?
Well, there's no doubt that confidence and the constant negativity of the first half of this year and talking Australia down that's happening from the Conservatives doesn't help.
So you're saying that people are listening more to the coalition than they're listening to the government? You're confirming that?
I'm saying it's always easier to tell a bad news story than a good news story, for sure.
So people aren't listening to the government; they're listening to the coalition.
It's always easier to be, as Stephen King will tell you, bad news plots will always outdo a happy story in the filmmaking industry, and the same in real life. But what we do have in the second half of this year is we've now got some detail on our proposals. The fact that we can now clarify and clear up what we're doing with our carbon pricing mechanism to go after the big carbon polluters, the fact that we'll be bringing in the mining rent resource tax and the detail of that, the fact that we're trying to lift adequate superannuation from 9 to 12. There's a lot of tough times in the economy, but compared to the rest of the world, this country is still in an okay position, and we've got to look at the positives as well as the negatives.
But do you think that uncertainty in the government has added to uncertainty in the community?
Oh, listen, the government's passing all the bills and all the administrative laws it needs to do. I think that there's a climate of talking Australia down at the moment. But you talk to any Australian who goes overseas and comes back, you talk to them at the airport, I call this the airport test, Chris. Most Australians, when they get off a plane from anywhere else in the world, say, thank goodness I'm home, this country's doing better than other places in the world. It's still tough, but we're doing better than other places in the world. And the challenge of today's findings, draft report into the retail industry, what it tells me is Australian retailers need to change their value propositions as much as we need to have a look at policy settings in government. The customer's not done, and if the customer's not shopping in your shop, it could well be that you need to have a look, buy a mirror and look at your own performance rather than just blaming everyone else.
Bill Shorten, thank you.
Good evening.